Good evening and welcome to Crime Beat. I'm Anthony Robart. Tonight, the unbelievable story of a family subjected to betrayal, obsession, stalking, vengeance, and murder, all at the hands of one man.
It was like 5:30. I normally go and get myself a coffee and I reverse out of my driveway and all of my lights on my car started lighting up saying that one of my tires is flat. I'm like, I should probably check the second car just to make sure.
And that's when she came in and woke me up and she goes, we have 2 flat tires.
And there's this truck that pulls up the street.
We were all looking, that's strange. It's punks or something like that just going around. Megan goes, no, I think it was him.
Before I left for work, I said to Bert to keep in contact with me throughout the day.
So I start working on the car that was in the driveway. That's when an individual came up. Hi, bye, how you doing? He was just going on and on. So I immediately turned around and went, oh shit, that's you.
Here now is Mark Carcassole and the ties that bind.
Ambulance, what is your emergency?
I have an unresponsive. She's on the floor and she's not moving.
It's a little after 9:30 a.m. on December 21st, 2018.
It looks like she might have stood up and then fell face first.
Okay, we've got fire and PD on the way as well.
We arrived approximately 5 minutes later. I noticed an elderly female lying face down on the floor. There was some dry blood around her face and a small pool of blood just around her head. Our initial thoughts were that maybe she had a medical and she had just passed on in her home.
83-year-old Maria Arujo appeared to have been wrapping Christmas gifts before she died. Her granddaughter, who we can only identify as SA due to a court order, lived with her at the time, but had been away for the day visiting her mom. She says she woke up that morning with a sense of dread, compelled to check her phone.
I had 4 text messages from my aunt. She said, "Where are you? I need you to call me," right? So I was in absolute panic. So I called her. I was like, "Hey, is everything right?" She's like, yeah. We both fell down the stairs.
Not knowing the extent of what had happened, SA tried calling her dad, Alberto, or Bert. When he didn't pick up, she called his wife, Megan.
I was told at that time that she had actually fallen, and I thought that she was in the garage. I'm like, okay, maybe, she was getting groceries and she slipped and she fell when she was coming out of her car, or she could have possibly had a heart attack. I really had no idea what was going on, but she was like, we're trying to get a hold of Dad and we can't get a hold of him.
Meanwhile, inside the house, police noticed something suspicious.
In one of the bedrooms, some drawers were open, and there was some jewelry and some kind of miscellaneous papers and whatnot kind of strewn on the bed. We took a look at it and kind of thought about it for a minute and said, yeah, this kind of doesn't look right. We determined that maybe we should secure the scene.
Someone was looking for something specific, almost like a break and enter type of situation. It just wasn't as spread out as extensively as most break and enters that we traditionally see.
My stepdad was driving me down to Mississauga when I got a call from Meg, and she just said, Vovo passed away. And I just...
Sorry. It's okay.
I remember turning onto the street, and it was very surreal. There were cop cars, but there was also like a crime scene van. And I hopped out of the car and detectives started asking me a bunch of questions.
As confusion grows, SA's dad still can't be reached. Megan hadn't heard from him since she woke him up that morning after discovering both their cars had flats.
In my mind, I'm thinking he's got to be at his mom's. He already knows that she passed away and he's getting things figured out there. But at the same time, I'm like, but I don't know. That's when I call Mom and I ask her to go around and try to find Bert.
Went over to the house. Megan's car was on the road and Bert's car was in the driveway. Bert, are you home? Kind of peeked in their bedroom to see if he was in the shower, opened the garage door, nothing there.
I did hear Linda constantly calling my name, but I couldn't reply, I couldn't say anything, and then Linda left.
I went out and I messaged Megan and said, Bert's not home. I texted Bert and said, Bert, are you okay? You know, what's going on? I got a text saying, not home, out with friend for coffee. This is not the way that Bert responds to things with me. I get another call from Megan, and now she's desperate, and she's crying, Mom, Bert's mother is dead. Went over to her house again.
I hear the front door go again, and then I hear Linda's voice again. Bert, are you in here?
Came back out, went to pick up Megan. I said to Megan, maybe Bert has already gone to the hospital, you know, to see what's going on with his mom. And on the way back, Megan got a text that said, when you get home, come to the basement. I need to talk to you quietly.
Welcome back. 83-year-old Maria Araujo has died in her home under suspicious circumstances. The family is desperately tried to find her son Alberto to let him know, but he's not responding. His wife Megan was the last to see him when she woke him up that morning to tell him both their cars had flat tires and that someone had cut the valve stems. We now return to Mark Carcassole and the ties that bind.
So I start working on the car that was in the driveway. That's when an individual came up. Aye, bye, how you doing? He was just going on and on. So I immediately turned around and went, oh shit. I go, it's you. And I immediately knew it was Alex.
Alexander Bates, a former friend who'd spent 3 years in prison. He'd been out on parole for the last 10 months.
He had let his hair grow out. He had a scruffy beard and in a full mechanic's coverall outfit. And he goes, I think we need to go inside and talk. I was like, okay. I happen to have a breaker bar to help give a little bit of leverage of getting the lug nuts off the vehicle. And I was slowly starting to reach for it, and he goes, stop, or I'll shoot you. And he pulled out a gun, just the butt end of the gun. And it goes, I'll blow your head out right here on the driveway. I won't even think twice of that. And that's when I was like, okay. And I walked into the garage. He closed the garage door and asked me to lie down on my stomach. And that's when he zip-tied my hands behind my back.
I'm calling Bert probably 20 times. I'm messaging him like crazy, and I'm getting messages back saying, I'm in the middle of something right now, give me a minute. My battery's about to die, I need to go charge my phone before I contact you. And it was just messages like that, redirecting me a different way and not actually answering.
We got into the house. He goes, where's the recording device for the cameras? And I couldn't point to it, but I said, it's right there. Immediately ripped it out. I go, okay, so let's go to the dining room and talk. He goes, no, let's go downstairs. By the time we made it down the stairs, he pointed to the bed and he goes, go sit down over there. I go, okay. And as soon as I sit down, he goes, maybe I should tie up your legs too. He got into this whole, how hard it is to find a job when you've been convicted. How am I going to make up the money that I lost? That's up to you. You need to figure it out, not me.
Alberto Araujo and Alex Bates were members of the same motorcycle riding group. Bert and Megan even credit him with introducing them.
He was a loud guy. He was the center of attention. He was just a friendly guy and friendly to everybody, and everybody loved him.
I knew my dad used to ride motorcycles, and I kind of got curious what it'd be like to be on the back of a motorcycle, and so he brought me out one day, and that's when I kind of met everybody.
It was another thing to enjoy with her.
She was a priority to him, and he made her number one, and he would actually be out and doing things and interacting, and that was inspiring to know that he cared so much about being involved in her life.
But everything changed when Alberto was severely injured in a highway crash in July 2012.
The leg was pretty much cut open from the top of the thigh down to the bottom of my calf. I was in Sunnybrook for a good three and a half weeks. And then from there, I went into the rehab center. It had to be 7 weeks, 8 weeks.
Friends and colleagues offered to help with anything he needed, but Alex seemed particularly focused on helping out with SA.
A doctor's appointment, dentist appointment, school, lunches.
I was really bored that summer, and Alex offered to take me out, go camping with all the friends, going on motorcycle rides, kind of the things that I would do with Dad if he was around at the time. Honestly, it all seemed perfectly normal to me throughout the summer. I'd say it was probably Labor Day weekend. He asked my dad if he could take me camping with all of his friends, and Dad was like, yeah, of course, if I have time to get out of the rehabilitation center, I'll come down and I'll see you guys. And I had my own tent during that weekend, but it was that night when I said I was going to bed, mostly everyone was asleep, and he offered to walk me back to my tent, and I kept saying no, it's okay, I'm a big girl. I think I was 14 at the time, but he kept insisting, and so he walked me back to my tent, but he came into the tent with me instead, and that's when he started touching me, and I didn't know what to do. At the time, I kind of froze, and I kept saying no and trying to push him off of me, but he just kind of kept going. I mean, up until that point, I had zero experience with any of that type of stuff, and I was really hard on myself. I kept telling myself, it was probably something that I did to deserve it. I kind of just said, nobody can know that this happened, and so I went on as normal as best as I could. And later on, when he asked my dad if I could come over for a movie night with his family, I knew if I said no, somebody's going to be like, oh, but she always used to go for movies. Or why is she saying no now? Did something happen? And so I said yes, and that's when he started taking advantage of me being away from my family and being alone in his house. And at that point, he started telling me, you can't tell anybody about this. If you do, your family's gonna hate you, they're gonna disown you, you might go to prison, what you're doing is wrong. And I was just really terrified.
When did things start seeming off to you?
Well, it would have been when I was just released from the hospital and everything was still continuing the same way, where they would meet up, they would go out and be taken to school, coming back. Megan and myself, we were just kind of well, what the heck's going on?
Did you know at that point that it was sexual?
No, not at all. It was an inappropriate relationship. I didn't know in which way it was inappropriate, and you can't just accuse somebody of doing something like that with zero proof and everybody telling you that, he treats her like a daughter. You doubt yourself.
When my mom heard, she took it immediately as there was something sexual. And I was just like, no. I was trying to always look at the good part of it, that yes, he may have wanted to help and assist, but the more that we kind of talked about it, it's kind of like, no, it's not right.
But Alex held great sway over their friend group, turning many of them, including SA, against Bert and Megan.
He would invite me out for a ride to a restaurant, and everyone would be like, where's your dad? And Alex would go, oh, he decided he didn't want to come. And they'd go, oh wow, that's kind of awful. Meanwhile, he wasn't even invited to go. And it was just slowly saying really awful things about him, and people genuinely started to believe it.
People who really didn't even know us were also backing themselves away from us.
I even had one of his friends kick me out of their house saying I'm the problem.
He would find the weakest link and he kind of remove me from that person and then go on to the next. So it started with my mom and then my dad and Meg, especially when she started voicing her concerns. He started to realize that she was catching on.
The more they tried to discourage S.A. from hanging out with Alex, the more she dug her heels in.
I genuinely thought that I was in love with him, and if Alex invited me out, you know, Dad would kind of put his foot down and be like, no, I think you should stay home and spend time with me. And I'd go, oh, see, you know, you're acting exactly like he said that you would.
The control that he had on her was incredible.
They enlisted S.A.'s mom, Bonnie, a police officer, to help them figure out what was going on. She tried to meet with Alex several times, but he repeatedly canceled.
So she was talking with somebody at work and discovered that if you have a family plan, you can mirror the phone and find out what messages are going into the phone, and she did that and immediately started getting messages into her phone that were highly inappropriate.
Bonnie's husband reached out to me and said, you know, hey, we need to have a talk. You know that we're mimicking their phone. Well, Friday of this week, Alex is going to go to her high school, pick her up at lunchtime, going to go take her out and have sex with her. I was beside myself. I was just like, we have to do something.
It was decided Bert and Megan would pull S.A. out of school early that day, faking a family emergency, taking her to a police station where Bonnie and her husband Ivan would be waiting. It was a tense car ride.
In the back of my mind, my voice was screaming at me, they know, you're in so much trouble. And I started texting Alex. I said, I think they know what's going on. And he said, you know, like, don't say anything, like, shut your mouth, like, you know, jump out of the car, run to the nearest bus stop, I'll come pick you up. You're gonna go to prison, don't say anything, you know, throw your phone out the window, like, smash it. By the time I got to the police station, I was terrified.
We met Ivan and Bonnie in the lobby of the police station, and immediately she kind of went off onto her own because she was constantly on her phone texting. And Bonnie kind of pulled out her phone to show what messages she was sending out and what messages were being received live time. It was Alex saying, delete everything that's on your phone, don't talk to anybody.
I didn't say anything. They sectioned me off from everybody. And the detective at the time was trying to talk to me, ask me questions, but I was not speaking. They asked if they could see my phone. They took it.
She was shaking. I've never seen her that scared before.
I think we were there for maybe 5, 6 hours and nothing.
My stepdad ended up having to sit down with me and kind of, you know, like, this isn't your fault, you're not in trouble, we just want to help you. I slept on it, and the next day we went back to the police station and I ended up opening up.
Police found more than 20,000 text messages showing the progression of the relationship between Bates and S.A. over 3 years. It was enough to arrest him, but they had to find him. Bates was routinely traveling between Ontario and Alberta for work.
Megan came up with a really good idea that we talked to a mutual friend that was more of a friend to him than he was to us, and play it that I messed up. She won't talk to me.
We made up a little lie and actually told her that she was somewhere else.
She's just avoiding me, like she won't return any of my phone calls. I don't know what to do.
Within an hour, there was a police safety check put out on that address to go and find out if she was there or not. And afterwards, they determined that the phone call came from his phone.
My phone rings, and it was the detective that was in charge of the case. She goes, well, I don't know what you guys did, but we apprehended him at Pearson. Finally. It was kind of a sigh of relief. Like, finally, it's going to stop.
After he was arrested, bail conditions required Alex to move an hour and a half away to live with his mother, who had to accompany him everywhere.
She had to drive him to work, he couldn't be in his own vehicle, he couldn't have online access and all of this kind of stuff.
But not long after, Bert saw something shocking on social media.
There was a mutual friend that posted a video where I saw he's out on his motorcycle, where's his mother? Mother's got to be present, so I called the investigating officer, only to find out that the bail conditions had been amended, that as long as his mother deemed it to be a safe place, it was okay. So he was able to reside back in Mississauga with his common-law wife, and he was able to go out and about on his own.
The Crown approved it and felt that the concerns that we had were invalid.
What did they specifically call you?
Overprotective parents.
It was a letdown, but fortunately, they'd already made a move to keep SA safe, with the help of Megan's parents.
I didn't know a whole lot about what was going on between him and her until Megan and Bert came up actually for my birthday. And when they walked in, I knew that there was something wrong, and then they laid it on the line, what had happened. And basically they asked if they could do a midnight dash and move up to Smithville. So my daughter, my son-in-law, and my granddaughter the next day moved to Smithville. My granddaughter had to change schools. She lost all of her friends. Nobody was supposed to know where they were.
He did know our schedules. He did know where we worked. He knew that there were other places that he could potentially stalk, hide out, whatever you want to call it, in a chance to see us. It was always looking over your shoulder. It was always, okay, this is the route that I usually take to go to work. So no, I'm going to take this route to go to work. No, this is the GO train I usually take. I'm going to take that GO train. So it was always something different.
It was tough. We pulled her out of the life that she knew and took everything away from her. Not only were her teenage years taken away by him, but they were taken away by us too.
They basically just said, well, you can't go back to school. We need to hide you, like no phone devices. My phone was taken, like tablet, laptop, everything, and I had nothing.
We felt so bad that we agreed that she could go to her prom in Mississauga because she deserved that. But Bert and I were so terrified of her being at a school that he used to pick her up at when he's desperately trying to find her. We dropped her off and we ended up having to sit out front and watch the front door the entire night. But it was terrifying.
Still, they took some comfort in the fact that he didn't know where they lived. But one day, on the way to the courthouse, Megan and Bert say they were followed by a strange car. They weren't able to see who was driving it, but Megan had a gut feeling.
At lunchtime we come out and I'm like, I'm gonna check the car.
I was like, don't worry about it, I just want to check under the car. Like, don't worry about it. Nothing's gonna happen. We're in the middle, we're at court.
I look under the car and sure enough, there's a tracking device there. And in a clear, pristine Ziploc baggie that didn't even have a spot of dust or water, and it was raining that morning. So it was clearly put on at the courthouse.
I don't know who we told inside. I said, we've got something attached to our car. It's a tracking device. If you can just hush, hush, get someone to come out, take it off, and put it into evidence.
They bring out the bomb squad, they bring out everybody to investigate.
They had to close down the Brampton courthouse.
And they determine it's not a danger and that it is a tracking device.
We came back home and the first thing that we decided to do was to check our vehicle that was sitting at our house.
There is a device recording attached to the back of my truck.
The exact same device, Ziploc bag, everything was on my vehicle. But you can clearly see that it was there for days because there was dirt, dust.
When they did tests on both devices, they found his thumbprint on the tape and it was connected to his email, and he called the devices Sneaky Pete number 1 and Sneaky Pete number 2. We were told that the tracking devices had SIM cards in it, so they were live just like your cell phone. You could pull the information from it at any time. We were terrified.
We moved to get away from him. Like, do I have to move again? At what point do I stop? Do I have to move countries? Because I think at this point, that's the only way that he's going to stop.
The trackers were added to the Crown's case against Bates as a criminal harassment charge. He pled guilty to that and sexual interference for the offenses against SA. Assured he'd be locked away, SA moved into her grandmother's home in Mississauga to attend university.
He ended up getting about 3 years for what he did to me, but we ended up asking the judge if it was possible for him to get a sentence that was just long enough for me to be able to go to university, graduate, and then be able to move away from Mississauga. And Obviously, they didn't give him enough time because he was out in my third year.
That was February 2018. 10 months later, he'd taken Bert hostage.
Welcome back. Sitting in his basement, hands and feet zip-tied, Alberto Araujo has no idea when or even if he'll make it out. Here again is Mark Carcassole and the ties that bind.
No clocks down there, so I have no idea how long time had gone on. He pulled out a longer zip tie. He put it around my neck. I knew immediately he was just there to kill me. He was constantly on my phone. What he was doing, I have no idea.
He was pretending to be Bert, trying to lure Megan home. She'd been looking for Bert all morning, getting Linda to check the house twice. Not finding him, Linda picked her up from work, and they headed back a third time.
I heard the door creak open. And then it got real silent.
I'm really nervous, and I grab a bat from the garage.
I have a bad leg, and I don't do stairs. But I didn't want my daughter to go to the basement and face this on her own.
The door to come into the basement was left open. Alex had placed himself behind that door, and Megan was quietly, as quiet as she could, come down the stairs.
I stop in the doorway of the basement, and I see Bert laying on the bed, and my brain just couldn't comprehend what was going on and why he was laying on the bed, and I'm just kind of focusing my eyes to, you know, am I really seeing what I'm seeing? And I take a couple steps forward.
I was trying to make as very little movement as possible because I felt Alex was looking at me as opposed to looking at the door. I was constantly trying to, with my eyes, move over to where Alex was. Megan took one more step forward, and I think that's where she was at the edge of the door, and I guess peripheral vision kind of saw him.
And I just remember staring at his feet and it just being so slow motion. It felt like it was a good 20 minutes that I was looking at him, looking from his feet to see the boots and the tracksuit, and then looking up and seeing his gloves and seeing his hat and his face, and it probably happened all within a split second, but it felt like forever. And I threw the bat at him and I ran.
So as soon as the bat hit the floor, it startled him, so he stepped backwards. And that's when Megan had a chance to turn around.
The only thing that I could think of is to get away from there as quickly as possible and get help.
I have to hold on when I go downstairs, so I was holding on each side, and Megan deked under my arm and ran out of the house. Unfortunately, I can't run.
When Alex kind of regained composure, he immediately chased after her. What I didn't know was Linda, who never goes downstairs, was sitting one step below the landing at the center of the stairs. When Alex ran after her, he got held up by Linda. He took out the gun that he had on him.
And he put the gun in my side and, you know, started screaming to Megan, if you don't come back, I'm gonna kill her. If you don't come back, I'm gonna kill her.
I didn't hear any of it. I didn't hear a single thing. I just booked it out of the house, and when I looked right, I saw a garage door was open. And I said, that's my best bet. I can hide in there.
Niagara emergency, do you need police? Fire
Hi,
ambulance?
can I please get in? Please, we have somebody in our house.
Okay, just take a deep breath. What is your name?
I'm Megan. Sheriff, our daughter was sexually assaulted 3 years ago, and the guy, he has my husband tied up in our basement.
Who is the suspect?
And my mom is in there. His name's Alex Bates.
Alex Bates is the
Yes.
suspect?
Yes.
So he dragged me down the stairs and he zip-tied my neck. And he did it so tight that I couldn't breathe. And the last thing I thought before I guess I became unconscious was, I'm coming to see my son today. My son passed away just prior to this happening, and I thought, I'm going to see my son. And that's the last thing I remember.
I lost it. I was screaming at the top of my lungs. If it was gonna be just me, I could care less. But not to injure somebody, not to injure family. No, but not to injure family. And that's when I figured, it's a fight situation now. What can I do to get out of this?
As Bates was about to tighten the zip tie around his neck, Bert made a desperate move.
I figured, well, I saw this in a movie once, why not try it? To make my neck as thick as possible, so no matter how much he pulled, he couldn't pull it as tight as he could. So I bunched up like this, and I held that as much as I could as he was tightening.
Bates took off to find Megan. Alberto made a break for the kitchen, hopping.
Got to the landing, took a few breaths because I was gasping, hopped up the rest of the stairs, and I made it into the kitchen. Once I was able to get my hand free, I opened up the drawer and took out a knife. I cut the zip tie around my neck. Immediately cut the zip tie around my legs. Grabbed 2 knives. One small enough to get around Linda's zip tie, and one for protection for myself. And I ran down the stairs. I tried to get my pinky between the zip tie and her neck, cut the zip tie off. All I kept on saying is, breathe. You're strong, let's go, breathe. And when I went to stand up, he hit me with something, and the next time my eyes opened up, I was on a chair, slumped over a table.
In his desperation to help Linda, Alberto hadn't heard Alex come back. Unable to stop Megan, he returned, picked up the bat, and viciously beat his 2 hostages, leaving them to die.
I drove there silently, no lights, no sirens. I pulled up. So as I was walking towards the house, an individual popped over from next door in the backyard. This guy's wearing construction overalls, and I'm like, come here, please, I gotta talk to you. He just stares at me, and he just turns and walks towards the road. This is a red flag here. Something's not right with this individual. He's just ignoring me. So I kind of put my body in front of him to block him. I go, where's your identification? He goes, my wallet's in my truck.
And we kind of in tandem escorted him towards his parked vehicle. He's answering very abruptly, having a hard time supplying basic information. This guy's being evasive. So I removed my CEW, known as a taser. It's just a guarded, ready position. You're allowed to have it in the event you need it. I could see him shaking and trembling, and he's having a hard time breathing. He's trying to shake through it, and he'd take deep breaths and almost shivers. He'd look at my taser and look at the sky, and he'd utter things like, you gotta kill me.
And I hear Rick saying a few words to him, nobody's gonna hurt you, buddy. And he was trying to talk him down.
And he took a big breath and just, he went calm in an eerie silence and just looked at the sky, and that was it.
He thrust his buttocks towards me, pushed me back a little bit, and then he lunged forward into the vehicle.
He took his left hand and grabbed his jacket. I flipped the jacket open, and with his right hand he grabbed a pistol out of the back seat and pointed the pistol towards us, and he pointed it to the left side of my face. I had the taser at the ready, so I used it once, deployed it once, and the probes made a contact, but a partial contact, so you can see him feeling the effects of the taser, but he fought through it.
Rick was yelling, gun. So I put my left arm around his throat, and I was holding the gun up in the air like this to keep it out of the way, to not point towards Rick. As I threw him, I seen him staggering backwards. He had the gun still in his hand. He was raising it towards Rick, and I'm pulling my firearm out of my holster and bringing it up, and I heard the shots fired.
I shot 2 times, and I could see the bullets actually impact his body. And it spun him, it dropped him. but partially it slowed him down, I think, but he got angry. And it's very odd from police standpoint. You know, you're trained to shoot and things stop. Humans don't. The bullets, 2 bullets don't always stop you. And adrenaline, a big person, so I had to fire 2 more times. And the last 2 rounds actually shot through his elbow and shot the gun out of his hand.
As he dropped the gun, fell down on his back, I was running up. Rick still had his firearm out and ready. I reholstered. We got into a little bit of physical altercation with him, trying to get his arms freed up so I can arrest him, put the handcuffs behind him.
We got him in cuffs, but it was all 2 to 3 minutes. Things slowed down. I could see the actual casings from the gun exiting the side of the pistol, the puffs of smoke, the slide on the pistol coming back. There were birds in a children's playground just to the right of us, and I heard birds. My own boots sounded like garbage cans, just a scuffle. So everything slows down, and that just, it freaks you out. He kept saying, thank you for ending my life. He made some utterances about people in the house.
I go, how many people is in that house? He goes, 2. 2 dead, if not they're badly injured.
I get a call from Meg, and she is just in an absolute panic. She's like, you know, it's him. We go to the officers at the front of the house, and we go, I think we know who it is and what's happened. There's another incident out in Niagara. They're connected.
Welcome back. As Bert and Linda fight for their lives in hospital, Alex Bates is treated for gunshot wounds just down the hall. At the same time, police investigate links to Maria Araujo's murder. Here now is Mark Carcassole with a conclusion of the ties that bind.
In the wake of the police shooting, the Special Investigations Unit looked into and cleared Officer Fior.
The subject had actually brandished what we came to conclude was a starter pistol. This pistol only discharged blanks. However, anyone looking at that would have concluded that was an actual firearm. The conclusion was that the subject official certainly was justified in discharging his weapon to save his life and also to protect his partner's life.
When we went into the house a couple days later, there was a large pool of blood on the bed. Linda's clothes, her glasses were there, covered in blood, broken. And then beside where Bert was found on the ground, a large pool of blood on a chair and blood splatter.
Bates pled guilty to the attempted murders.
He was given, I believe it was 13 years for Linda and 13.5 years for myself to be served concurrent.
We were all kind of shocked.
During their investigation, Niagara police had found, among other things, several pieces of heavy clothing and pre-tied zip ties in Bates's vehicle.
It included weapons, a repellent, a writing pad that had the address of Bert and Megan in Smithville. All those things combined made it suspicious that this had started at Bert's mother's house.
I was very skeptical that this was a break and enter. To me, it screamed out that this was more staged. A light in one particular bedroom had been left on, and it was more ransacked compared to other rooms.
The room belonged to S.A.
My mind did turn to the fact that Alex Bates was probably looking for her whereabouts.
They had a tough time making a case, though. Most of their evidence was circumstantial, including surveillance video from a nearby strip mall, where a pickup truck, similar to Bates's, pulled in at 1:50 p.m. the day Maria was killed.
We observed a lone male exiting from the driver's side, putting on a construction jacket with reflective tape on the back. He was carrying a duffel bag, walking towards the area where Maria lived. That coincided with another witness account where someone had heard a female scream when an individual wearing a very colorful jacket was in front of the door at her house. So based on that information, we knew we had the right guy.
Something else in Bates's truck linked him to the scene.
There was a baton that we were extremely interested in having DNA. It was very similar kind of shape to the impact injury that was suffered by the deceased on the left side of her head.
9 months later, Peel Regional Police had enough to charge Bates with first-degree murder. Evidence included surveillance video of him prowling around outside Bert and Megan's house the night before the attacks in Smithville.
After the preliminary inquiry, after having heard all the evidence against him, it became clear that our best hope was a second-degree murder conviction. Thankfully, the Crown made the offer.
There's a level of certainty that you get with a guilty plea that you wouldn't get with going to trial. And we had spoken at length with the family about this too, because they had been through so much already.
Not only did the court hear that Bates went to Maria's home to find SA or get information on where she and her family were, but that Maria was hit several times with a blunt object and died by manual strangulation.
You put your filthy, stinking hands around my mother's neck, and you wouldn't stop until she stopped.
In October of 2022, Alexander Bates pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison, with no chance of parole for 16 years from the date of his arrest 3 years earlier.
2 attempted murders and a murder, and he's eligible for parole in 13 years. How's that fair? How's that justice? So the moral of the story is, if you're going to do a crime, kill or maim as many people as you can, because you only do 1 sentence.
That does not mean that the offender will be released at the parole date, but simply that they can apply, and it's the parole board who decides whether they stay in custody or whether they're released.
There's a 50-50 shot, and I don't like those odds.
I worry about him getting out all the time. It kind of still feels like to this day I'm still in hiding because I don't want him to know anything about me, where I live, where I work, what my plans are for the future. I don't want there to be even a chance that he can come back after us.
When he got out from his 4 years in prison, he had restrictions. Didn't stop him from finding out where they were. He's going to do the same thing if he gets out on days or if he gets out on parole. He's a man with a vengeance, and he's going to come after them again.
We're the ones that have to live with the mental anguish and live with the physical pain. I had an aneurysm, and they needed to put a coil in to fix the vein.
Both Bert and I still have vertigo. It's ongoing. I can't look up. If I look up, I tend to fall over. I still have to go for follow-ups on my heart.
He took almost my entire childhood from me. I mean, I was 12 when I met him and 14 when he started everything. I was 17 by the time I was pulled away from him. I mean, I still struggle with coming to terms with what happened and what he did to me. I don't get those years back. I can't be 16 again, you know?
I left my mom on the stairs. I do know that if I took that extra minute to help her up the stairs, he would have got me. He was on my tail. He was right there, right behind me.
Thank God she got out. If she hadn't got out, none of us would be alive.
I know in my heart that that was probably one of the only options of the day, but it's a very dark spot on my heart.
It's hard. It's a struggle. There's good days, there's bad days.
I ended up getting through my 4th year of school. I wrote my thesis. I ended up meeting my partner. The one thing that I can say about all of this is you start to appreciate just the little things. You have something happen and it might be major to somebody, but you think to yourself, it could be so much worse than that.
The hardest part of healing is living with the loss of Maria.
My mom was the center of the family. Like everything revolved around my mother.
She welcomed me into their family as if I've been a part of it my whole life. She's everybody's grandma, the sweetest lady that you have ever met.
Her legacy is her family. Her legacy is her son, her daughter, her grandchildren. She'll never be forgotten.
Everyone looked up to my mother. She would help out at a drop of a hat. Christmases after haven't really been the same. It's hard not having my mother around.
She helped raise me for a lot of my life. She was probably the closest person to me back then. This is St. Christopher, the protector of traveling. She really didn't like us going out on the motorcycles. She ended up giving these to us because she thought it would protect us. Since then, I just keep it with me, you know. In the back of my mind, it's like carrying a piece of her with me everywhere I go.
I'm Anthony Robart. Thank you for joining us tonight on Crime Beat. Want more episodes of Crime Beat? Listen to the Crime Beat podcast now for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you find your favorite podcast. And for past episodes of Crime Beat, go to the Global TV app, visit globaltv.com, or check out our Crime Beat YouTube page.